can do the video together. Yes. Maybe. Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Tara East. I'm a writer, blogger, YouTuber, and the author of the mystery novel Every Time He Dies. In this week's video, I want to talk about writing critiques and this trend that some people have of not being honest in critiques because they don't want to hurt the writer's feelings. Now, the purpose behind writing workshops is to give and receive feedback on our creative works. I've really noticed a trend among my students who only focus on the aspects of the story that are working, and they really shy away from providing any critical feedback in their critiques. Some students feel that they are not experienced enough to critique another student's work. Who am I to say anything about somebody else's writing? And almost all of them are afraid of hurting the writer's feelings. Now, to clarify, if you don't know what I mean by peer critique, what happens is that we share a story with the group of writers, with the group of students. They take that story home, they read it, they come back, and they offer advice on that story. So they comment on the things that are working, but then they also highlight things that aren't working in the story. So it's a way to really practice that editing skill. And now this is totally understandable because sharing a creative work is a very vulnerable act. And what is even more unique about this situation is that we're sharing new, raw work that we have not spent years developing. It's probably a story we pumped out last week. And it's very underdeveloped, and we know it's underdeveloped. We, the writer, haven't even had the opportunity to perfect the work, and we're already receiving feedback on this very rough draft. The critiquing process of creative writing workshops is a flawed system because writing is subjective, at least to a degree. I would also argue that we all know good writing when we see it, and we all recognize potential in a story when we read it. Workshops have often been criticized for favoring realism, for stifling creativity, and encouraging students to write more or less in the same way. Now, I want to actually unpack just a little bit that point about stifling creativity. And that is because some students, when they're writing, they become hyper aware of the fact that whatever they write is going to be critiqued next week by their peers. And having that awareness of the future potential criticism that they may receive actually stops them from writing instinctively and intuitively because they're already considering the audience rather than writing for themselves or writing the story as it wants to be written. However, all that being said, critiques are a part of every single creative writing program for a reason, and that's because they're really valuable. We can't see our work clearly, and there is something that is really wonderful about getting to discuss an early draft of your work when you're really in the meat of actually building it. And what's even better about these writing workshop critiques is that these discussions are happening with other people who understand the craft of writing. Now, ideally, these critiques are always delivered in an environment that is safe, supportive, and encouraging, and the critique should always be delivered with sensitivity to the writer. Oh, my puppy just came in. My new puppy, who you haven't met yet. Come here, Junie. Come here. Oh. So this is Juniper. She's 12 weeks old, and she is an Airedale, and she's so gorgeous, aren't you, darling? Hey, aren't you a beautiful girl? Do you want to look at the camera? Oh, kisses. Beautiful girl. Do you want to stay on my lap? Hey, we can do the video together. Yes. Maybe. So critiques are the most helpful when they are specific, and this is one way that we can combat the fear of hurting somebody's feelings. If you describe a story as being boring, confusing, or bad, the following things can happen. The writer will have their feelings hurt, and the criticism is actually too vague to be meaningful. If you were instead to say, the beginning of your story is a little bit slow because there's way too much exposition, or the transition between these two scenes was actually kind of confusing. When you give that sort of feedback, it actually is really clear to the writer what's wrong, and they very quickly start to solve that problem because our brains are problem-solving machines and they like nothing better than to solve a good problem. Now, this is invaluable information to the writer. It is the type of feedback that can clearly guide the writer as they move forward into the revision stage. And when you focus on the writing rather than the writer, it is likely that your comments are going to be more objective, less personal, and way less hurtful. A good critique will not hurt a writer's feelings. Instead, it should make them excited to know very clearly what aspects of the work could be further developed and what can be left alone. I'm just jumping in here because I was editing this video and I realized there was something more that I wanted to say about critiques. And that is, even though critiques are really valuable, you also don't want to be in writing workshops forever. The writing workshop is a place for you to develop the skill to deliver and receive critiques, because that's how you develop your own critical thinking and critical understanding of writing craft. And in doing this, you develop a trust muscle where then you trust your own editorial decisions and creative and critical thinking about your writing. And that's the purpose of writing workshop, is to develop that skill. And then you get to go on and you need to learn how to trust it in your own writing and in your own editing and revision processes. So that's the last point I wanted to make, and welcome to my kitchen. All right, back to the other video. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Me and Juniper would love to hear from you. Do you enjoy doing critiques? Do you enjoy receiving critiques, or is it a process that you kind of dread? I'd love to know, so please leave a comment below. And if you'd like even more writing advice, you can of course check out the other videos on this channel, or you can visit taraeast.com and dive into the archives. While you're there, please consider joining my email newsletter, because if you do, I'll send you a free gift, a video called The Follow-Through Formula, How to Complete a Long-Term Writing Project. You'll also receive a newsletter in your inbox every single Thursday morning, including a note by me, a quote of the week, links to that week's blog and video, some resources I've recently loved and think you will too, as well as some other tidbits that I only share via email. Thank you so much for watching again this week. Stay safe, stay calm, and keep writing, because the world actually does need more books.